The office was buzzing with the usual Monday morning chatter when something unusual happened. Daniel, the CEO of a fast-growing international tech company, walked down the lobby stairs and froze. He had stopped in his tracks not because of a boardroom crisis, not because of a phone call from investors, but because of a voice that didn't belong to any executive, any high-paid consultant or polished manager. It belonged to Miguel, the quiet, gray-haired janitor who had been working in the building for years. Daniel had heard Miguel speaking before, polite greetings in English with his soft accent. This time was different. The CEO had caught him in the corner of the lobby helping a confused visitor. The man was struggling with directions, speaking in rapid French. Without missing a beat, Miguel switched from English to flawless French, guiding him warmly. Just as Daniel's eyebrows lifted in surprise, another woman approached asking for help in Mandarin. To the CEO's astonishment, Miguel turned and spoke in clear, confident Mandarin, as though he had lived his entire life in Beijing. Minutes later, a delivery worker walked in speaking Portuguese. Miguel didn't hesitate. He responded in Portuguese, smiling, waving, as though it were the most natural thing in the world. Daniel couldn't believe it. Here was a janitor, someone most employees barely noticed, revealing a gift that not one person in the office had known about. The CEO stood there hidden, watching silently, until the thought struck him like lightning. Why is this man cleaning floors when he clearly has a talent the world should know about? The next morning, Daniel invited Miguel into his office. Miguel entered nervously, holding his cap in his hands. He wasn't used to being summoned by executives. For years, he had been invisible, just the man with a mop, working late nights and early mornings so the office shone for everyone else. "Sit, please," Daniel said gently. "I need to ask you something. How many languages do you speak?" Miguel hesitated, his eyes flicking toward the floor. "9," he whispered. Daniel leaned forward. "9 fluently." Miguel nodded. "Spanish, English, French, German, Mandarin, Portuguese, Italian, Russian." The CEO sat back in silence, stunned. Why are you here as a janitor? You could be a translator, a diplomat, a teacher?" Miguel's eyes grew wet. "Because life is not always fair, sir. I came to this country to build a better life for my family. Back home, I studied languages since I was a boy. My father was a teacher, my mother sold books. But when I arrived here, no one wanted a man with an accent, no one cared about my degrees. They only cared if I could scrub floors, take out trash, work the jobs nobody else wanted. And I accepted because my children needed food, they needed clothes. For them I swallowed my pride." The room went quiet. Daniel, a man who had spent his life climbing the corporate ladder, suddenly felt small. Here was a man of brilliance, humility, and sacrifice, hidden behind a janitor's uniform. But the story didn't end there. Daniel could have simply nodded, thanked him, and moved on. But instead, he made a decision that would change everything. The next week, the company's monthly all-hands meeting, Daniel asked everyone to gather in the auditorium. The employees filed in, expecting a routine update on profits and strategy. When the lights dimmed, Daniel walked on stage with Miguel by his side. The crowd looked puzzled. Why was the janitor standing next to the CEO? Daniel took the microphone. He began, "I want to introduce you to someone you think you already know. Many of you walk past him every day. You might smile, maybe not. You see him working quietly in the background. But what you don't know is that this man is extraordinary." Then, turning to Miguel, he said, "Would you show them?" Miguel's hands shook as he took the microphone. The room was silent, hundreds of eyes on him. He took a deep breath, and then he began to speak. He introduced himself in English, then in Spanish, then in French, then in German, then in Italian, then in Mandarin, Arabic, Russian, and Portuguese. One after another, flawless accents, smooth transitions, confidence building with every word. Gasps filled the room. Applause erupted. By the time he finished the 9th language, the entire office was on their feet, cheering and clapping. Some had tears in their eyes. Miguel stood there stunned, overwhelmed by the standing ovation he had never imagined in his wildest dreams. From that day forward, Miguel's life changed. Daniel gave him a new role at the company, head of global communications and cultural training. His salary multiplied. But more than money, Miguel found something he had lost long ago: dignity. He began leading language workshops, helping the company expand into international markets. Employees who had once overlooked him now sought his advice with respect. But the journey wasn't without challenges. At first, some doubted him. A few employees whispered, "Is just a janitor. What does he know about business?" Others resented that someone without a fancy degree or corporate background was suddenly in leadership. Miguel faced those whispers with the same humility he always had. He worked harder than anyone, stayed late, and used his gift to prove his worth. Slowly, the skeptics fell silent as results began to show: new deals in Europe, partnerships in Asia, stronger connections in the Middle East. All because one man refused to let bitterness define him. And Miguel's children. They watched their father transform before their eyes. No longer the man who came home exhausted smelling of cleaning supplies, but a leader, a mentor, an inspiration. His daughter once said, "Dad, when I see you up there speaking, I feel like the world finally sees the man I've always known." Then 2 months later, in another company meeting, Daniel addressed his staff again. "I want everyone to remember what happened here. Greatness does not always wear a suit. Sometimes it carries a broom. Sometimes it empties your trash, and if you don't look closely, you might miss it." The room erupted in applause once more, but this time it wasn't for the CEO, it was for Miguel, the janitor who spoke 9 languages, the man who taught them all a lesson in humility, perseverance, and the power of never letting your light go out, no matter how hidden it may seem. And that's how the story of Miguel spread beyond the company walls, inspiring thousands. A story of resilience, hidden potential, and a reminder to every person watching: your circumstances do not define your value. Your light will always shine if you refuse to let it die. Because sometimes, the person the world overlooks turns out to be the person it needs the most.